Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Scott Ridgway, and I'm the immediate past chair of the Metro Human Relations Commission, and I'm the chair of this event. In my professional life, I'm the executive director of the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network. I would like to welcome everyone to our Metro Human Relations 50 and Beyond Anniversary Luncheon. The Metro Human Relations Commission is very proud to be a part of the Metro 50 series and to be a part of the daily efforts to make Nashville, Davidson County government responsible to the needs of its people. Today's event is intended to honor the legacy of commission, which during the past 50 years has helped the city make astonishing transformation from civil rights battlegrounds to exemplary civil liberties and diversity. I would like to thank everyone who was a part of the planning committee for this event, and I would like to have them stand and recognized. Judy. Okay. And some of the folks that were a part of the planning committee are not here today, but we do want to recognize them. We'd like to thank our musician. Thank you. Wonderful. At this time, I would especially like to recognize Mark Balt and his assistant, Cheryl Hunt. Cheryl is over here, and Mark, raise your hand. And also the staff of Baker Donaldson. They're our host and primary sponsor for today's luncheon. Any other Baker Donaldson staff, would you please rise, stand, so we can recognize you? Thank you. If it wasn't for all the hard work that Cheryl and Mark's put in, this event would not, and again, I'd like to thank them. Since the Metro Human Relations Commission was established in 1966, there has been over 150 people who have served on this commission. These are people who have set the tone and the agenda for the commission, promoting personal dignity, safety, and general welfare of the people of Nashville and Davidson County. While certainly not all of them could be with us today, I would like to take a moment to honor those who have turned out for this event. I would like to, this time, ask all the past and the current commission members, if you've served on this commission, would you please stand so we could recognize you for being here today? Thank you for your service to this commission in this city. Additionally, there are several public officials who have joined us today to demonstrate their city and state support for the work of the commission. If you are an elected official, whether you serve state, local, would you please stand so that we can recognize you? Thank you. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce a very special person to the Metro Human Relations, from the Metro Human Relations Commission. Although this body has had several acknowledgments and effective commissioners, a great deal of the day-to-day work from this commission, the planning, the networking, the handling of the concerns and the complaints made by the citizens are handled by our Executive Director, Caroline Blackwell. Would Caroline join me? Ms. Blackwell has spent the last 20 years in both public and private sector working to promote conflict resolution, interpersonal dialogue, and the appreciation of the rich tapestry of human experience. She is an experienced consultant, trainer, mediator, as well as many other contributors to resource books dealing with diversity in education and cultural competency. Ms. Blackwell has only been with us for 2 years, but already has helped establish the Metro Human Relations Commission as a vital force of Metro government and in the lives of the people here in Davidson and Nashville. It is my pleasure to introduce her and welcome Caroline Blackwell.
Oh, thank you so very much. Thank you, Scott. I thank all the members of the Metro Human Relations Commission, past and present, and all visitors and guests who are here today. I've said a couple of times that my house isn't big enough to have a party of this size, but if it were big enough to do that, I'd have all of you here. So many of you have made a personal impression on my life and on the nature of the work that I do, and I am forever indebted to you. It's important for us to be here today not only to celebrate or at least commemorate the consolidation of Metro government, but to recognize that that achievement carries with it a responsibility. And that responsibility is in part articulated by the mission of the Metro Human Relations Commission. And that mission, simply put, is to protect and promote the dignity, safety, peace, welfare and security of everyone who resides in Davidson County. That's a really tall order. And because it's a tall order, I believe that it's shared not only by the members of the Metro Human Relations Commission, elected officials, and all others who serve the public, but by everyone in this room. And so I invite each one of you to join all of us who care deeply about rights and responsibilities for the people who live in our community and beyond to join us in this mission. The Metro Human Relations Commission has 2 charges by Metro Code. One of those charges is to provide multicultural education services for the residents of Davidson County. The other is to provide compliance services. We do that with your support. We do that by having those of you who are interested and committed to these causes to join with us in the programs that we offer, which include services for Metro students through our Student Human Relations Initiative, could include diversity and dialogue, which we have been doing for 10 years with our partners, Scarlett Bennett Center in this community. We're doing a new partnership with Belmont University's Center for Executive Leadership and bringing conflict transformation programs to this community. We are working now with restorative practices. It's a joy to be in the company of my commissioners who have a vision for what this commission can do. When I started this position 2 years ago, I didn't know that there was an invisible imprimatur on the office of Executive Director, and that imprimatur was set by Warren Moore. Yay. Yay. Dr. Moore has a vision that I share, of deep vision of inclusion of all people, of understanding that diversity is a broad umbrella, that diversity includes people of all kinds of differences and those of us who are the same, because there is diversity within sameness. It is an amazing opportunity to me to stand here today and to introduce to you our featured speaker, the first executive director of the Metro Human Relations Commission and the executive director of the Tennessee Human Rights Commission for 20 years, Dr. Warren Moore.
This is pretty expensive equipment up here, and I hope I don't spill water on it. Good afternoon. It's an honor for me to be back here, along with my wife. She's over there. She's only about this tall. She might not see her. We've been in Texas for some time, but we haven't been disconnected from Tennessee. We were last here a couple of years ago at a friend's funeral, Dr. Brown. You might have known that. But we don't get here very often. But this is the most important event that we've attended since we left. when they were kind of shooing me out the door. It was a delegation of people that I have known over the years, and the same is true today. I see faces around the crowd here that I've worked with, those I actually marched with, and raised our voices and tried to raise the voices of others. You see our state legislator, Ms. Harper, I see you. Okay. She's known by her signature hats, of course. And she, of course, was very helpful in helping the Human Rights Commission of the state stay on its course. So I could really just go through the crowd and pick people out for individual things, contributions that they made to the efforts, but that would take all day, and I understand that I've used 2 of the 15 minutes that I had. Okay, so let me just follow up the original statement that was made by one of the commissioners. The original ordinance was 1966, but it sort of lay dormant for about a year. And in 1967, the board appointed a staff of 3 people: executive director, associate director, and a secretary. Mr. Cloud over there was the associate director. I will just I made comprehensive notes, and actually what was happening, it was like an out-of-body experience. I'm getting ready for something, and I got to remember everything that happened. But that's not really necessary, because I discovered since I've been here that there is a new cadre, although the others are still here, hopefully in an advisory capacity, because they're about as old as I am. But that younger cadre has locked on to the issues regarding human relations, and they won't seem to let go. I doubt that the executive director now will be timid. I doubt. She doesn't impress me as a timid person. So I think you're in good hands, having the communication mechanism set up that we tried to set up in 1967. The first thing we discovered was that we were not a law firm. We were not especially endowed with anything. We were just pointed in a direction. They said, you are the Human Relations Commission, and we took that seriously. And we went out to try to involve other humans in relating to each other in a different pattern than they had been. Now, this was just following, not many years before that, we had had some different type experiences as sit-in, as students, as protesters on college campuses and in and around Fisk and Tennessee State. So we really weren't that far removed from that period. And here we were talking about a government-sponsored Human Relations Commission. And so there we were with a loosely connected relationship to local government. It was not that we had been completely embraced by local government, but somehow you, the public, the people who make voices heard and understood, had convinced the politicians that it'd be a good idea to have a Human Relations Commission here, because Metro government itself had not been all that well received. It was a new form of government. Outside of Dade County, there weren't many examples around of a city preempting the authority of little communities all around it. So they had to get over that too, because there were little places still holding on to their courthouse and their sheriff, and they had those little provincial things that identified them, and they weren't quite sold on the unification. But here we were, the Human Relations Commission, going out to tell them to let's come all together, as King said, let's sit down and why can't we just love each other and all. But that didn't go that well. I'll give you an example of how it was at that time. All I will try to do is paint a picture of the past. Now, some of you know that because you were involved in it with me. But for those of you who are kind of new to this, you might have been working 10, 15 years, but that still makes you kind of new to this. We were told you need to go out and do something. And so the something that we interpreted as our mission was to get involved in that process that somehow has alienated the communities, that is, particularly the black community, around Fisk, Tennessee State, and in South Nashville. Those communities were somewhat isolated and alienated from the seat of authority in the courthouse. Now, Mayor Briley had come in, and he having been a county judge, he had the political background and all. He kind of overseed that area. And what did they do first? They almost hugged us to death. They brought us into the courthouse, gave us an office in the mayor's office. And there we were, sitting in the mayor's office, saying we're going to help human relations. And we were going down Jefferson Street talking about human rights and things. And they said, well, where's your office? Well, we wanted to go to the next point. We don't want to talk about that. So I told the board, now what we've got to do is get some credibility. We need to move out of the mayor's office, number one. Now, and we moved out of the mayor's office, but we moved across the street into the Stallman building. And they didn't really want us in there. They told us as much. The old guy came down the hall one day and said, what do you want? I said, well, I'm here. Probably a cup of coffee or something like that would do. What are you doing in this building? I mean, that's how it was at that time. So anyway, we got through that. Fred was my emissary. Fred knew this guy who was doing the talking. He said, we have an office upstairs now. And so he got him straight. And then we went back to the same areas where people had looked at us strangely and said, well, hey, we are in the Stallman building. And said, oh. I said, but, we want to talk about some other things. We want to talk about you and your relationship to the broader community. I mean, it's okay to say you know everybody up and down Jefferson Street and you know all of the people who've been here a long time, but you need to get to know some different folk. You see? So that's what we talk about. We want to talk about a different type of relationship. Now, I'm not going to read this because the executive director has a copy, but I just want to hit the high points. We came into this situation where there was a lot of alienation. Metro government somewhat alienated from its constituent counties. That's one type of alienation. But then there was like these subsets within the community. In North Nashville and South Nashville, then the university centers, even Vanderbilt occasionally made a foray into that, because they did kick out Jim Lawson, But they brought him back and hugged him to death. But, we had our mission. We were defining ourselves at the time. Now, executive director read a list of things, and that was a charge. Yeah, that was the charge at the time. Go out and see what's going on, try to interpret that. Now, when I heard that, I said, we've got to go out and find out why the police seem to be acting the way they're doing. Now, I didn't, nobody told me to phrase it that way, but that's what I saw. I saw them running up and down Jefferson Street with impunity, doing whatever they wanted to do. Okay? Now let me further dramatize this. The black community did not buy the idea that we were going to actually bring any relief of any kind just because we were the Human Relations Commission. We had to sell the point that we are valuable not only to the community, but to the government. That's it. The Human Relations Commission is a part of county government. It's a part of it. but that it didn't carry the same measure of acceptance as if we had come out and said, we're from the water department, water and sewer, and I will cut off your water if you don't do this and that. We'd have to say, look, we notice that there's some dissonance here that's causing a lot of problems, and let's talk about that. Are you having problems? Now, who do you know is having a particular problem? We have to catalog all of that. But the problem ultimately was we didn't have authority to hold hearings. We could go out and get all the information, dramatize it, but we still would have to come back and hand it over to somebody who may or may not do anything. Now that's sort of a bad situation to be in. But that's what we had to work with in 1967. So as things turned out, moving out of the mayor's office didn't alienate us from the mayor because Ms. Green was there, and Ms. Green could get things done. And Bob Horton was there, and we get things done through him. So what we started doing was routing our concerns through other people. So we got them to step up and even say it was their idea. That's fine. And they would get some kind of hearing set up. But we didn't have subpoena power. You probably don't have that yet. You see, you can't tell people, look, I saw you, and I'm going to have this subpoena for you to come in here and tell us about this stuff. We couldn't do that. You probably can't do it now. It's really, I don't even advertise that that's a good way to do it. What you need to do is make sure everybody knows what's going on. Everybody. You see, Ms. Ursery, for example, down in South Nashville, she was one of the early ones. We got involved, and Zuli wanted to get at somebody. You know, she just, and Ms. we had real characters in the community. They wanted to do something, but they weren't organized. They didn't have an instrument for doing it. So we offered ourselves as being a legitimate part of government. Come and talk to us. Now, we'll walk with you, and we did. Well, the trick of that is you've got to watch everybody. We had to tell the demonstrators, look, some things you kind of going over the top, and a couple of people come to, I don't want to call names, but Miss Magruder, for example, she didn't want to wait. She'd get out in front of you. So y'all better come on, because I'm going to march on the Hill. Amen. I said, wait a minute now. Let's get a group together. Let's all get coordinated, and let's all be saying sort of the same thing when we get there, not just picking out people and threatening them, I say, look, they have a police force, we don't. So, calm it down a little bit. Okay, so anyway, I said, there was a little consternation. We were an official part of government, but we had to convince government that we were, in fact, a part, and they kind of watched us. But Dr. Mitchell, who was the first chairman of the commission, was out in North Nashville trying to talk to the leaders of a protest group. And for his efforts, he was hit in the head with a brick. So he was taken into Meharry with a head wound. Now, that kind of tells you that segment of the community was not convinced that Dr. Mitchell would be able to contribute to anything. They say, well, we know he's a doctor and he's a Meharry, but what is he doing here in the middle of this? And so that was part of it. There were VISTA workers at the time, Volunteers in America, Volunteers in Service to America. And they were here. I got a call one evening to come down to the jail. They were all in there. And we had to take part of the blame. Bill Barnes and Beiswinger and those guys, they need to take part of the blame too. They would tell those visitor workers how they need to get into community, plan out, kind of pick different areas and work. And that's what they were doing. But the police didn't see it that way. They rounded them up, had them in jail. They called me down. I got down there, the executive director of the Human Relations Commission, a legitimate arm of government. The first thing occurred within 1 minute was they had my arm twisted behind my back, pushing me down the hallway, trying to get me into a holding cell. One policeman said, "He's the leader." I saw him at the city auditorium. He's the leader. He's the one we need to be locking up. So I called my commissioners. I said, I do get this one phone call I saw on television. So I got to call my commissioners. Reverend White came down. Andrew White came down, and he was a no-nonsense kind of guy. And he had his cadre of influence over here and all that. So anyway, pretty soon the chief of police showed up, and he and Andrew were talking, and other commissioners. And what that led to was that not just a confrontation between the board, the Human Relations Board, and the police department. It led to the question, what can we do about it? What should we do about it? Fred and I decided this was our entree. This is the point. We've been pecking around this wall. We see a gap here. We're going to get in there. We suggested that the police needed sensitivity training. And we also knew they would never accept either one of us. So we got Vanderbilt, Peabody, and Tennessee State to bring together their experts on sensitivity. As near as we could come to that were some psychologists, one psychiatrist from Meharry, but he was too intense, so he didn't stay long. So we brought them together and we said, look, we want you to sort of explain something about the interconnectedness of humankind. Let these policemen, although they are sworn to their various duties, but it's still a matter of perception. So you need to talk about how human beings can relate to each other. And despite all the official stuff about badges and guns, just how would these two people relate to each other on a desert somewhere? Because theoretically, that's where we are in our race relations. We don't have any road signs. We're just out here, you and us here. So that went on for a number of years. Getting policemen to come in and understand that just another human being, they're interacting, all right? Just trying to paint the picture that this is how the commission came to be. And it was within this environment of some acceptance. But, by and large, the Human Relations Commission was considered by some just as a throwaway piece to the black community. We set up the Human Relations Commission. Now, y'all go away and don't keep hanging around up here at the City Hall, all right? But let me tell you, in spite of all of what Fred and I tried to do, the greatest asset we had at the time was an intelligent newspaper. Now, I know all of you know there were two newspapers, but I said an intelligent newspaper, all right? The morning paper, the Tennessean. I don't know much about that evening paper. I tried to stay away from it. But two people within the group would always read it and tell us all the bad things that they said about us. But we had John Siegenthaler, who had a whole history of his own that he brought to that. And he understood the process. And he would get people he knew would write the story right. All right, so Dwight over there. All right, somebody said he's retired. I didn't believe a word of it. And I found out he's not, really. He's retired, but he's still over there doing things. But it's that context that they gave us a mission which was kind of open-ended, and we went out and tried to put an agenda to that, all right? So I expect this panel here will flesh it out even more. I expect that they will tell you about issues that didn't exist in a public way in 1967. There was no such, even vocabulary has evolved. We wouldn't have known in 1967 what they were talking about if they had talked about some kind of orientation, sexual orientation. How can they, what do you mean, orientation? But they are talking about real issues. You know, the people who have that experience will be just as animated when they're talking about their rights as we were when we were talking about people dragging us off of stools and throwing us in jail. Now, we had that kind of background, but they have another background, just as valid. You know, so you'll hear that, and that then will be the forward reach of the commission. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Cornfield. I'm chair of the Metro Human Relations Commission and also a sociology professor at Vanderbilt. And would the panelists please come on up to the panel? And I am honored and charged with the responsibility of introducing our panelists. It's a real pleasure to see many friends in the audience. I would say that this is the audience that has assembled here and the great panel that we have here is probably, Nashville has reached the point where we probably have a community of activists and people who are concerned about the definition of community that is probably more demographically diverse and more thematically broad than at any time in Nashville's history. And as Dr. Moore just mentioned, today, this very wide coalition that we do have that is represented on the commission and on the panel very much stands on the shoulders of the work of Dr. Moore and the civil rights generation in Nashville, which, as Dr. Moore suggested, was championing not only civil rights but human rights for all people. In that instance, it was the case of civil rights at that point in history. It is also my honor to serve on such a commission, including with members of the original activists who sat down at the lunch counters, like my fellow Commissioner King Hollins. So now I'm very pleased to introduce the panel to you. I might also mention that on the back of your programs is what we think is a complete list of all commissioners, all individuals who ever served on the commission. So today we have a very distinguished group of panelists. Each is a pioneer in bringing us to this point of creating a city that increasingly is known for human rights. We certainly always have our work ahead of us, but we've come an extremely long way. And each of the individuals on the panel is not only a pioneer in the human rights field, but also is a global citizen. They have clearly transcended their individual backgrounds to have a very wide embrace of humanity, and that is certainly what we are striving to do on the Commission as well. So let me just introduce our panelists here. In the center of the panel is all of the individuals need no introduction. They're all very visible pillars of the community. John Siegenthaler will serve as the moderator. John Siegenthaler has exercised his First Amendment rights tirelessly as a great journalist, writer, editor, and publisher on behalf of minority rights, civil rights, and human rights for Nashville. And I will name the other global citizens on the panel here. All the way to your left is Senator Thelma Harper, Betty Nixon, Greg Ramos, and John Bridges. So each, I'm sorry? Oh, Fred, Fred, I'm sorry. Fred Cloud, who has served as the Executive Director of the Human Relations Commission for probably about 20 years. So thank you, panelists, for serving, and please proceed.
Thank you very much, Dan. A long time ago, very long time ago, my mother told me the first responsibility of the moderator was to be moderate. And there have been times in my life that has not been easy. The second thing she said is be brief. And that's even more difficult. But I'm honored to be here. Deeply appreciate the introduction. Warren, I deeply appreciate your comments. And with that, I'm simply going to call on each panelist who's going to speak from a different perspective. I would simply say, as I think back as an observer, admirer of the work of this commission, there have been difficult times. It was not easy to get this community to come to grips with the idea that it needed this commission. And there have been times as different pockets of discrimination have evolved against different minority groups in this community, when the commission's work has been more than challenging. There have been moments in this community, 5 years, in which all funding, believe it or not, was cut off. And somehow, in the face of adversity, this commission has survived and thrived. And I heard Mayor Dean say yesterday that, and he will say, I know again today, we're one of the 5 most attractive cities in the world. And there are many reasons for that, but one key reason has been that we have had a Human Relations Commission that helped us understand each other as changes took hold. And with that, I'm going to begin. I don't know that there is anything farther left than me, but I'm going to begin. I'm going to begin on my far left with John Bridges. John.
So what do you want me to say, John? What's the question? Interview me. What?
I don't have a question for you. I will tell you, each panelist has 3 minutes. Now, it's particularly hard for Fred Cloud. It's hard for any preacher to speak in 3 minutes. But you've got 3 to set the standard. Have at it.
Okay, well, number one, let me say in 1967, I would not have been up here. Okay? And it's not because I didn't have a driver's license and wasn't able to get here. But there would not have been a gay person on this panel in 1967. I am, of course, proud to live in the city of Nashville, this great city that I love. I'm particularly proud of our Metro Council a couple of years ago doing even a more progressive movement of adding non-discrimination against LGBT people to the hiring policies of people doing contract work with Metro. But I am disappointed and mortified by our state legislature. Okay, when it comes to their trying to block that movement, the Don't Say Gay bill and its current permutation movement to try to remove state funding from educational institutions that receive that have non-discrimination policies. So it's been a really great time to watch this city grow and to change, and particularly the lesbian and gay transgendered community. Because I can remember years ago, the other night at the Human Rights Campaign dinner, Margaret Ellis was asking if anybody in the room remembered Watch Your Hat and Coat, which was a drag bar, I think it's down on 2nd Avenue. I remember it, and I would go, but I wouldn't go in. I would stand at the door and watch through the door and watch the drag queens. But it was a place where people went. And they would have the Miss Gay America pageant there. Not too many years later, they were trying to have the Miss Gay America pageant at the Carousel, which was a bar in town at that time. They wanted it to be a benefit for somebody, and nobody would take the money. That's a world then, but because of things that are going on right now, the world is not completely changed. But I'm glad to have seen it change and to be part of it, of watching it change and being part of that change. Is that my 3 minutes?
I think you're inside. I think you gave me a minute back. He may have given you a minute, Greg.
Well, Greg,
you're next.
I'm a lawyer. I need a minute, more than a minute. I'm Greg Ramos. I've been in Nashville for 28 years, literally half of my life now. And I want to tell you where I came from. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. There have been a lot of things that have happened in Arizona these last few years. Part of me wishes I would have been back there to be able to help with the fight, but we're coming around. Arizona has a 1/3 Latino population, and things are going to be changing. They're already starting to change. When I came to Nashville in 1984, it was a totally different world. I was one of the very few Latinos in all of Nashville. I can't tell you how many people came up to me and they would just say, "What are you?" And I'd say, "Well, I'm Sagittarius. How about that?"
I knew he looked Greek.
But, that was a strange question to me because it was a totally different world. I came from a place where a lot of people looked just like me and would speak the same languages. And by the way, that's 2 languages that I would speak, to a place where I saw no one who even looked like me, at least very few. There were some people at Vanderbilt, but certainly not where we are today. Now, in 2013, 1 in 10 residents of the city are Latino. And it's a totally different world, and that number is going to keep on increasing. We've had a lot of bumps along the way. When I came here, I'd never even been east. And, well, I take that back. I'd been all the way to east to El Paso, Texas, before I came to Nashville. So I said, I can do this. I'd been a lawyer for 4 years at the time. I actually put people in jail in Phoenix. I was an assistant DA there. And I came here, I said I could do things. At the very beginning, this city was, and it really always has been with me, very inclusive, very open, very receptive. But then as the numbers of Latinos increased in Nashville, we hit a lot of bumps along the way that you all know. And I was able to get involved in some things along with all of you great people. And we've made some changes. We've made some real progress in Nashville. Along with Mayor Dean, I think one of the things that I will always be so proud of is that in 2009, we defeated the English-only resolution, referendum. And to the day I die, I will be so proud because that was totally what this city is all about. We brought together in our Nashville for All of Us coalition, which really was a Nashville for All of Us coalition. We brought together business, we brought together labor, we brought together Catholics, Protestants, Muslims, Hindus, Jews. We brought together people of great means, poor people, common people. I think it's one of the greatest coalitions that this city has ever seen, and I was so proud to be a part of it. And I'll tell you, I graduated from Arizona State University and went to the law school there. It's now called the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University. So when you come as a lawyer to Nashville, and all these great lawyers from Vanderbilt and UT and other schools around here, I was in a different world from a law perspective too. But I would not have told you that in 1984 I would have been the first attorney or first president of color of the, at that time, 170-some-year-old Nashville Bar Association. Now, I mention that for a couple of reasons. I couldn't believe that in 2004, I was the first attorney of color. I said, no, that can't be. But the other thing I want to mention, in case you all don't know about it, that the president-elect now of the Nashville Bar Association is an attorney of this law firm. His name is Charles Grant, the first African-American of the Nashville Bar Association. I am really proud of that because we're continuing to move forward. We're continuing to make strides. And thanks to the great leadership that we've had in the city, we're not going to stop. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
The lesson my mother did not teach me after the first two was to be prepared for changes in the format and the agenda. And we just had one. Mayor Dean has honored us with his presence here today. But as some of you are well aware, he's constantly alert to challenges facing the city, and he has another busy afternoon ahead. And so you didn't tell me to do this, Mama, but Mayor, I'm going to interrupt now, and the floor is yours. His Honor, Mayor Carl Dean.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you for the panel for allowing me to interrupt. I've got, this is actually my third event for Metro 50 today. Yeah, and I want to thank Caroline for putting this together. You know, when I realized that Metro was going to turn 50 while I was mayor, I wanted to celebrate that in a big way. So we asked John Siegenthaler, Senator Harper, and George Cate to be the co-chairs for the celebration of Metro's 50th birthday. And I just didn't pick the first people who came into my mind. I picked people who are my friends, but also people who I know a lot about Metro. They know what it took to get this government created, and that they are really invested in it. It was more than a year ago that I asked them to help. Since that time, they've been busy meeting and planning events, giving speeches. John has been, I don't know how many panels you've done, John, but you've done a lot, and we appreciate it. Doing everything they can to highlight our unique government, doing exactly what I knew they would do when I asked them. I wanted to educate newcomers and young people. I wanted to bring back memories of those who watched and helped this new government unfold 50 years ago. And frankly, I just wanted to have a celebration and a party. We asked schools and community groups, congregations, Metro departments to do something to mark this significant milestone, and they did, and the events continue. I'm really glad to see such a wonderful turnout for this event. I believe this is exactly what the kind of event John Siegenthaler had in mind when he asked Metro departments to help celebrate our government. Right now, I want to invite all of you to come to the Metro Courthouse Saturday, April 6th from 12 o'clock until 3 o'clock for the big birthday party. You know, Nashville is a special place for a lot of reasons, and I won't disappoint John. I'll tell you that, you know, we were the it city, according to the New York Times. We replaced Austin, that replaced Portland, and people ask me what that means, and I just tell them, just enjoy it. I don't know. It's nice. But my favorite was Condé Nast, the great travel magazine, in January came out with a story that said that there are 5 cities in the world you have to visit in 2013 in the world. And those cities are Seoul, South Korea, Amsterdam in the Netherlands, Toronto, Ontario, New Orleans, and Nashville, Tennessee. So, and I know some of you are thinking, how the heck did Toronto and Amsterdam make the list? I think we make the list because we're a special place for a lot of reasons. It's a special place because we got great universities, we're the healthcare capital, we're a center of music, hospitality, tourism, and that's why we get recognition. But really what makes us a great city is the people who live here. It's the fact that we are a friendly place, we are inclusive, and we're trying to be more and more inclusive. And I really think a lot of that goes back to the example that the first Human Relations Commission set. It goes back to people like Fred Cloud and to Dr. Moore. 50 years ago, the citizens of the city of Nashville and the citizens of Davidson County took an unprecedented step by deciding to unify 2 local governments into one metropolitan form of government. Over 65,000 people took to the polls to voice their opinions either for or against consolidation. They went to the polls. They voted. Though many people in Metro Nashville, especially young people, may not think of that decision made 50 years ago as an especially radical one, because this is the only form of government that they have known. And despite an impassioned debate from both sides, today we know that the outcome of that vote set the course for Metro Nashville to flourish and to develop into the great city that it is. We were the first community in the nation to fully consolidate and still remain among only 14 city-county governments in the United States. I look forward to seeing that growth continue. I just came from the Arbor Day celebration at Centennial Park, where a tree was planted in honor of Metro's 50 years. And it's my hope that that symbolic tree, decades from now, is just as strong as Metro is now, and that it flourishes, and that we will continue to flourish and remain strong, and that we do not take it for granted. It is something that was fought for hard. A lot of people gave up things to make it happen, and it's worth keeping. It works. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, John, for giving me this opportunity, and John Bridges, thank you for that succinct presentation. That was very good. Thank you.
I was glad to hear the mayor compliment John on his brevity. I remember when he was a journalist at the Tennessean, I had problems with his brevity too. I mean,
But there were 9 inches to fill, when you would get home from a concert, and so you had to fit whatever you were going to say into that.
listen, he was a great critic, and Betty, we've done this before recently. I mean, the other night we were together, and I moderated a panel, and you had 5 minutes, and you're going to have to give me 2 of it back today. It's your floor, dear.
Thank you. John, when you were talking, it made me remember, when you talk about the nightclubs, my wonderful friend and that great Nashvilleian, Steve Smith, who was a pioneer, now missing. The Metro Charter was passed in the midst of the Civil Rights Movement in Nashville. At that time, the struggle of blacks was the human rights issue of the day, and J. Alexander Luby insisted that 6 of the 35 districts be drawn to be majority black. A decade later, when I came to the Metro Council, I was the only woman on that council. And questions were about the role of women in government, in business and society were emerging. So in my first budget hearings, I started asking department heads to provide information about how many women and minorities were employed in top management. I don't remember who the first person was that came before us, but I will tell you that he was completely flummoxed. But then word got around, and so when we got to the human resources guy, personnel guy, he drugged Billy Ferguson up to my desk to introduce her to me and explain what she did for him. She and I remembered that for many years. And it was the Tennessean that paid particular attention both to my questions and to the responses or lack of responses from the department heads. And with Mayor Dick Fulton's leadership, things slowly began to change. My point here is that it's important to use the bully pulpit to shine a light on the issues of prejudice and discrimination, whether they be intentional or institutional. The inclination of us as human beings, in spite of Warren's best efforts, is to be uncomfortable with, to overlook, or to fear those who look, believe, or act differently from the way we are. Racism, sexism, genderism, sexual orientationism, religiousism, my new isms, are all still with us. And there are isms out there, as Warren pointed out, that we haven't thought of yet. Because prejudice and injustice will always be with us, there is a constant need for citizens and public officials to stand up to injustice with intention. So in 1963, we certainly did not see the day when a Latino Nashvilleian would be pulled over for looking Latino, or when a Muslim woman in a headscarf might be the target of derision when she's shopping at the shopping center, or when some members of the Tennessee State Legislature would want to make it illegal for the child of a same-sex couple to talk to their school counselor about their family life. But of course, in 1963, we were not thinking about any of those things. My point is that we never know where the next wave of ignorance or hate or prejudice will come from, but it will come. Therefore, we must be ready as a city that values diversity and honors all of our people to defend our best selves. So I end by thanking the Human Relations Commission and all of you who have worked so hard on those issues for so long, for your leadership, your activism, both historic and future, on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
That's beautiful, Betty. Fred, you go back to the very beginning and take us back to the very beginning. Warren has provided a tapestry there, and I look for you to fill in the portrait.
All right. First of all, I want to say that working under Warren Moore for 3.5 years before he went back to get his doctorate was the most educative time of my life. As a kid in Arkansas, I had related to blacks, and my parents had taught me to be polite, but I hadn't had the experience of equality, working together as real colleagues. And Warren opened my mind and my heart to that and made me a zealot for it. I told John that in addition to the structures, the laws and ordinances that are passed, that the most important thing, I think, is relationships. You learn to trust people. You learn to discover who people will cut your throat and to avoid them. But I want to lift up the early commissioners because they gave real leadership. Dr. Ed Mitchell, Dr. Jack Tarleton, Rabbi Randall Falk, Reverend Kelly Miller Smith, Reverend Andrew White, Mrs. C.M. Hayes, Ms. Nancy Howell, Ms. Dorothy Webster, and Tex Thomas. Now, these were really dedicated persons. But we reached out to the community and to groups that were already doing essentially some of the things that we were called to do as our total thing. The Urban League, NACP, Project Return, Dismas House, Tennessee Fair Housing Council, and Tennesseans for Fair Taxation. There were also some mayors that essentially backed us up. Mayor Beverly Briley helped us as we moved to get the first fair employment, fair housing, and affirmative action plans in Tennessee. And then Mayor Richard Fulton was supportive of us. And then in the legislature, Senator Avon Williams, it was really the outstanding guiding light in the legislature, together with Senator Thelma Harper here, and we turned to them repeatedly. There were Metro Council members also who were supportive of us. I'll just give you one example of how a change came as a result of working with the community to address a real problem. In the spring of 1968, Stokely Carmichael, who was a very outspoken African American, came to Fisk and spoke. He churned up a lot of emotions in the young men, a bunch of whom went out into North Nashville and took rocks and broke out the lights, whereupon the police department responded with a lot of squad cars, and in some instances they were pretty rough with the young men, jerking them out of their cars or handcuffing them and throwing them into the back of the police cars. And so Dr. Ed Mitchell and Dr. Tarleton used a room in the courthouse for hearings. We decided, instead of suing the mayor and the chief of police, that we would seek to open lines of communication. And so Dr. Ed Mitchell took down affidavits, and we had a stack of about 40. And we decided after deliberation that the best thing to do was to go to the mayor and the chief of police and ask for good action, which is what we did. And we said, look, some cities have had a good experience with human relations training for police departments, and we think it would work here. And so they agreed to give it a try, and we pulled together persons from Vanderbilt, Peabody, Meharry, Tennessee State, and Fisk University. I think Warren mentioned this in his address, and asked them to draw up a model for improved relations between police and citizens. Well, they came up with a model, and we went to the chief and the mayor. They approved our doing it, and to their credit, Police Chief Kemp and his top staff were the first to go through. If they just had the new recruits to go through, they would have probably thought, this doesn't matter, we'll do it, and then forget it. But when the chief and the others did it, then they thought, hey, this is important, so we better pay attention. I'm happy to say that it made a considerable difference when the Human Relations Training program for police officers went through the whole police department. It made a considerable difference, didn't it, sir?
Oh, yes.
And it was noted, and it made a difference in the community. And other cities took note of what was happening. And it, with modifications, has gone on to the present time. So this is a permanent contribution that all of these organizations and individuals have created that has made a structural improvement in the life of our community. And that's something I'm very grateful that I was a little part of it, and that I had the privilege to work with Warren Moore and all of these commissioners that I've mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Fred. But you and Warren were more than a little part of it. You were a big part of it. Senator Thelma Harper, my co-chair this 50th anniversary.
First, thank you.
The floor is yours now.
That's very briefly. Let me tell you how important it is as we think about what happened then and what's happening now. You need to know that many of our people didn't know what metropolitan, they didn't know what it meant. And therefore, they didn't vote for it. And still to today, some of them don't know what Metro does. But it was really important when we looked at those council members, what they were doing in trying to get us leaving the yesteryears. And right today, as we go out and talk about what Metro does and what it didn't do, some of us still don't realize that there are those who are fighting to be like Metro. I hope you all are aware that there are those trying to just kill out metropolitan government, and I hope you all will watching what's going on. And please, whatever you can do to talk to those legislators who are trying to change what's happening to Metro, I hope you all will. You all got a lot of relatives somewhere, cousins and things. Let's work on it. Let's talk a little bit about as I think about what we did in those days. I always think about the dump. You know, we had to fight to get the dump out of our community, and it meant that we did some of the same things that you all have done. We decided one night that we were not going to take any more, and we were going to do so. We had 2 women, well, there were 3 of us, because we couldn't tell everybody what was going on. If they approved it, we were going to do a press conference. If they did not, then we were going to close the dump. And let me just tell you how we did it. I called 2 women. One of them had to have money because somebody had to take us to jail. Then we had someone to do all of the little things, what we were going to say, when we protest. Then we had a preacher, and I won't tell you who he is because he got scared. And really, we had a hard time holding him because he just got scared with so many trucks out there. And then there was another lady who had her children that they couldn't go to school that day. So what we did, we had to do posters and all of that. But anyway, when it was time, we decided, just like you have, we decided that at a certain time, 6 o'clock is when the dump was closed, was when it opened up. And we just decided that we were not going to take it anymore. Whatever trucks were there would be there, and those that were out, they couldn't come in. And that's what we did. We just marched and prayed, and we still held on to that preacher. He wouldn't leave. He was scared. So we just decided, and then after a while, if you remember Jason, what was his name? He was one who always talked a lot. But anyway, we went out and said, oh, do you know that there's about 2,500 women out here that are dumping, couldn't come to the dump? So after a while, everybody just started coming out all day long, and we were carried to the jail. They carried me to the jail too. It was the best thing of my day because it was 37 degrees. So when they got ready to hold us out, it was just wonderful. And they carried us out to just like now. We had to tell them, well, I think the judge got scared, and Walter Searcy told him that if he didn't behave, that next election we'd remember. So they just told us to go home and be good. Well, that wasn't all that he told us, but anyway, it's when we talk about metropolitan government, I think about the days of when our kids were trying to go to school, and J.C. what was his name, Mr. one that did the school, that bombed the school. Who was it? Casey Jenkins. Casey Jenkins. I think about those times. Yes, he was just unbelievable. And what we found out that, he didn't have it all either. And then there was the other boy from Alabama. What was the other one? Casper. There you go. Boy, see, somebody here is a little bit older than I am. John Casper. John Casper. He was. But one of the things that we were worrying about during that time was what we would do, what would happen to our children and so. And little did we know that Mansfield and all of those others, they were trying to decide what was to do with metropolitan government. But because of people who just like us, we changed it. That's how Metro got to be here. And we're grateful that all of us stand right now. We support what Metro does and what it did, and we're going to keep on doing it. Thank you.
Well, my agenda tells me that there is a little time for questions, and I would ask those of you who might have questions to raise your hand, and I'll try to recognize you, and I'll ask you to abide by the same rules that these panelists have abided by. They've been brief, and you get to be brief first.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Tisdale. I ran for mayor once, but anyway, I didn't get to again 30 minutes. I tried. The thing I want to ask of it is, Metro Police Department still has. Why isn't there a class? When I tried to go out for the 4th, they came up with no money. The next time our class at Tennessee State went out there, they claimed they still didn't have any money. The next time they came out, they only have 3 policemen as black on the 4th in that particular class. What is going on? Then they eliminate 2 of them, only 1 ends up in there. What is going on? Fire department the opposite way. I don't understand. Why can't we just take a whole group of people, put 25 blacks, 25 Hispanics, 25 Muslims, I don't care, and make them all policemen? That way you have a diverse group for everybody. But Nashville doesn't do that. We're still sitting in the 20s. We progressed just a little. We need to progress more. What are you afraid of? Is my question. What are y'all afraid of?
I look at this panel, and I don't think any one of them, I think the person who has the answer made his speech and left, and I'm going to call him this afternoon. I'm going to call him this afternoon and tell him your suggestion about 25, 25, 25, but that's the best I can do.
I mean, a diverse group means you need a population of all.
That's what it means. That's what it means.
We're not there yet.
Right.
And it's still scary because you still got the good old boy clique still in positions. We need to fix that. Anybody really help me? I'm all for it.
Hi, I'm Judy Rojek. I'm the current Metro Human Relations Commissioner. I just want to point a question to Mr. Bridges. Mr. Bridges, in your years of being in Nashville, I believe it's been over 30 or so, the relationship...
It's over 40.
40. How can you see the relationship changing as to the gay population and Metro Nashville as an entity?
Did everybody hear the question?
Well,
John repeated it.
yeah, Judy asked me over the 40 years that I've been in Nashville, how have I seen the relationships between Metro and the gay community change? We've come a long way. I was proud to serve as the first openly gay person in a top-level staff, as a top-level staff member in a mayor's office. But that really wasn't all that long ago. And I can remember the stings in the parks with the Metro Police picking up men in the restrooms in Centennial Park. Should the men have been misbehaving in the restrooms in Centennial Park? No, they shouldn't have been. But there was a sort of targeting air about things then, and I can remember I was at the Tennessean and when that was still going on, and at that time, although I loved being at the Tennessean, loved working for Mr. Siegenthaler, but at that time, the Tennessean ran not just the names and addresses of the people, but ran the places where they worked. And it destroyed people's lives. And I remember I went into Wayne Witt and said, why are we doing this? And we quit putting at least their places of employment. And so people maybe didn't lose jobs as much from that. But I can say, I remember when I was in the mayor's office, there was a problem that had developed with the tow trucks, with the wrecking companies. They would line up on 8th Avenue across from the gay bars, across from the warehouse and the chute, and would simply wait for the patrons to leave their cars and go into the bar, and then they would descend on them and tow the cars. Now, at that time, and I believe it's still true, there was an ordinance in Metro that if your car is being towed, if you come up to the truck while the car is being put on the truck, you can pay them $25 and they take the car off. They don't take the car away. But the wrecking companies figured over in that situation and in that part of town and with that clientele, that group of patrons, that they could do whatever they pleased because nobody was going to call and complain. And but some of the guys who ran the bars came to me, and we were able to work with the Metro Transportation Licensing Board, and frankly, we ended up taking some of the wrecking companies to court, and were able to stop that, at least for a while. But if there was a time when you could not have spoken up to somebody in Metro and have helped make that change, you would have had no place to go. You would have been afraid to have gone somewhere. And so I've seen that kind of change. And I also have to say, speaking to the issue of Metro, if we had not had a Metro government, we would not have had a Metro Traffic Licensing Commission to go to, and the city of Berry Hill could have done what it pleased.
John, may I make a comment?
Yes, Fred.
Yeah.
I'd like to give public recognition to Reverend Bill Barnes. Is he still here?
Yes, he's sitting right back.
Okay. Reverend Bill Barnes came to Edge Hill Church as its founding pastor, and the whole idea of Edge Hill was to be responsive to the community and be inclusive. And so it was the first church in Nashville to welcome openly gay persons. There is a Rainbow Coalition nationally. I think that Edge Hill for years probably was the first church to openly recognize gays and affirm them as full members of our church. And we've witnessed year after year to our quadrennium after quadrennium to the General Conference of the Methodist Church to try to get past the blind spot whereby they say openly gay people cannot be ministers and be ordained. And there is a growing sentiment of inclusiveness, and one of the best things to do is to recognize and affirm the positive things. All of us have known gay and lesbian people and have seen them be teachers, social workers, community workers, and I think that the change has to come here and here. We have to recognize that it is wrong to sweep aside all persons who have a homosexual orientation and to close our eyes to the contribution they make to the community.
Thanks, Fred. I think that says it very well. I want to just say to Baker Donaldson, this is a great forum, and I want to express on behalf of all of us our appreciation for the law firm for doing this. I mean, it's not surprising that law firm lead names after Howard Baker and Louis Donaldson. It's not surprising at all that you host us here today, and on behalf of all of us, our deep appreciation.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you all for being here today. We want to thank Dr. Moore for joining us all the way from Texas and Hawaii. Thank our distinguished guests, our moderators. Thank you all for being here, our musicians. We'd like to thank Metro for televising this. One of the last things I would like to mention is the Metro Human Relations Commission has a new fund at the Community Foundation. So many times there's not an opportunity that we have enough money in government. And Iris Buell, I do want to recognize you. She created that fund and worked with community foundations to create that. On May the 16th, mark your calendars, because we're going to have an event at Councilwoman McInberry's house. And you'll be getting some information. But that fund is really going to help support the Metro Human Relations Commission. Again, want to thank Baker Donaldson. I'd like to thank the staff, commission members. Again, thank you. This has been a wonderful event to celebrate Metro 50. You all have a great afternoon. Thank you again.
You too, David.